Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Rama from the CherishTV. I'm so glad to have you guys here again. Um, in this week's episode, I am going to talk about, it's kind of a follow-up to last week when I talked about my relationship with a narcissistic ex. And it's an offshoot of that because I help women recover from narcissistic abuse. When you're going through recovery, it's really important in the beginning to have words to describe what you feel, what you're experiencing, and how you act. Um, Awareness in the beginning is really hard. And so when you do start to identify certain things that don't feel congruous to your energy or to the core of who you are, the proper terminology, the right words can be really helpful in the recovery process. Now, the end goal is to eventually not have labels. Like that is the end goal. Once you get to that point, you can pretty much rest assured that you've worked through your crap. But up until that, but in that journey of going beyond labels, labels help to come out once you're pulling yourself out of the depths of abuse. Now, the label we're going to be talking about today is codependency. Before we get started, I'm going to explain quickly that what codependency is, and that way when we talk about, when I kind of dive deeper into what it looks like, you have a term to describe if to see if that term describes a behavior that maybe you are experiencing or have done in the past. So codependency from the dictionary is really just an excessive emotional or psychological reliance on someone. Now, the couple of definitions that I read, I did go onto the Googles and the Merriam-Webster dictionary and all this fun stuff to see how they described it, and they in the definition it does say partner, and in some case I guess they're qualifying it with like if you have a physical reason why, like an illness or something, as to why you may be excessively emotionally or psychologically reliant on someone. But this works for parent-children, sibling relationships, coworkers. This is literally any relationship in your life can be codependent, because we are just starting to realize how rampant narcissistic abuse is in our society. And if you look around you, I guarantee that the people that you work with have experience with it in some way. Your siblings have, or your family members have experience with it. Your friends have experience with it. I guarantee you. It is surprising to me that when I started talking about this, I didn't talk about it for years. I would only talk about it in therapy, because I thought that was the only context where anyone would understand what I was talking about. But when I started saying it out loud to coworkers and friends and just the people I would meet in my life, it turns out it's everywhere. And it's because we do, we are especially like people who are my age and they're in their 30s right now, we're starting to realize that this narcissistic abuse is really generational. It's just something that's been passed down and it's kind of embedded into culture. It's actually what a lot of cultures pass as culture, but it's still abuse even if it's normalized. So don't feel like if you do identify with what codependency is, the reason I preface all that is that I don't want you to feel bad about yourself. This isn't an attack on you. It's more to show you that what you've been through is weird. It feels off because it is, something is wrong about it. So there is something off about it. But also it's really, excuse me. It's also really important to know that you're not alone. in this. And I think that's really the most helpful thing to understand, is that there is a large portion of us who have been through this. We all describe it differently. We're all in different stages of having healed or not healed, or through it. But understand that you're not alone. Not everyone is aware enough to start doing something about it. But once you do become aware of how of what narcissistic abuse looks like, and recognize that maybe you've gone through it, you will also recognize the result of it in the relationships in your life and the people in your life as it is now. So anyway, now that I've talked for 5 minutes, 5.5 minutes, the codependency. So we've already defined it officially as an excessive emotional or psychological reliance on someone. What does this mean in real life? This usually means that narcissistic parents have empathic kids that they use to make themselves feel better. So as if you are someone who identifies as an empath, and you and you think that just means that you are designed to absorb other people's energy and you just have to deal with it. No, that's not how it works. An empath is someone, an empath, an evolved empath, will have very strict a set of rules and habits and routines that are designed to protect her or him from other people's energy, so that just because you're an empath means you can tap into other people's energy. That does not mean that you have to take it on in order to do that. Being an empath is a set of skills. And one of the skills is using that natural ability that you already have and creating construction around it. And learning how to use that superpower the same way Harry Potter had to learn how to use a wand, and use the power that he had through that wand to make things happen. Literally every Disney story ever has this same freaking theme in it. So being an empath is great, but it's not if it's damaging you, if you have no sense of self-esteem because of it, if you have crappy boundaries because of it, if you feel responsible for other people's well-being. That doesn't make you a good empath. A good empath has really clear boundaries, enforces them, has really great self-care, has a great ability to discern what is their energy and what is somebody else's. Has really clear and concise ways of removing energy that is not theirs. Like, these are being an empath is a set of skills that you have to develop in order to be a successful one. Otherwise, you're just an energetic sponge for the people around you, and you will always feel like crap because of that. But with codependency, the very common way that this is seen is that with empath kids and they have narcissistic parents, they're trained just as a product of being a child, where they are used to taking on and being the emotional caretaker of their parents. So they're there to have parents feel good. They're the punching bag when the parents get mad. They try to do things that will make the parents be the parent or parents in a certain mood, so that they can try to get something that they need. It's a very that kind of dynamic is very prevalent in that kind of a relationship. This is also seen in partner relationships. So it could be dreading going home after work because you're not sure if your partner's going to be in a good mood. This is something I had to deal with a lot. Or wanting codependency can also, like, if you have for me, like, an example of how it used to manifest with me was, like, I really enjoy cooking, but because my partner didn't enjoy the cooking and didn't eat anything, I thought that my cooking was bad, when really he just didn't like it. And it had his not liking my food did not mean that I was a bad cook, but I took it that way. So it's really important to understand where codependency is coming up for you. So because you can't solve a problem until you understand what it looks like, and it looks different for everyone, But if you are waiting to be validated first, to allow yourself to feel a certain way, to do something, to act a certain way, to dress a certain way, like if you are waiting for permission on everything you do, then that is a strong sign that you have codependent tendencies. It is surprisingly common. Again, I'm going to say this again. It's really important that you understand that just because it's common does not mean it's normal. Normal in our society now just means that more times than not, everyone does it. So if everyone's jumping off, if 51% of people are jumping off the bridge, that's normal. But is that how you extend your life? Probably not. The same thing applies with codependency. Just because we live in a world with social media where validation is a double tap away, but if you post a picture of yourself and then you feel like, and then you take it down 3 minutes later because it didn't get a certain amount of likes, that is something you're codependent on the validation you would get from strangers on a social media feed. Really important to see where you do this, because we do it in sneaky ways. It comes up in very it's just very, it is very sneaky. It's really the best word I can come up with, because it shows up in really weird places that you didn't think that you had. Like, for example, for women, when you're trying to recover from codependency, you can shift the codependency from the really toxic person or the toxic act to a less toxic act, but because your relationship with it is codependent, it becomes toxic. For example, a lot of women will shift the codependency that they experience with a partner or parent to exercise, and they'll just work out all the time. But there's this, instead of using the workout to manage anxiety, feel better about themselves, it becomes codependent when you cannot feel good. You feel guilty if you ever miss the gym. You don't have, you're unable to forgive yourself for taking a day off because your body just can't do it today, or you power through when you really don't feel like going, rather than just tuning into yourself and seeing, what's going on with me. The thing with codependency is, the reason it's so damaging is because you completely silence your own voice. You completely silence what your own energy is demanding of you in favor of someone else dictating what is right. And there's an inherent danger in that, because without that external mirror to tell you what to do, to tell you what's okay, to tell you what's allowed, you will kind of flounder, and that doesn't make for a better world. It doesn't make for a healthy, productive life, and it definitely will not get you into the kind of relationship that we all desire, that one-on-one, really supportive, intimate, fulfilling, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, that kind of relationship. You can't have that if you aren't whole within of yourself. So if you can't validate yourself, if you don't give permission to yourself, if you have no sense of self, you can't possibly have a relationship that's going to support a hollow person. And that's really, that may sound harsh to some people, and I'm sorry, not really, sometimes these things need to be said. And this is, again, I wouldn't say anything to anyone else that I haven't said to myself. And it's important to understand why self-love and self-care as a result of that is so important, because these self-care teaches you to put your needs first, to do what you need to do to feel good, and to say that it's okay to feel good. But it comes from, no matter how much people like me will validate that, until you validate that for yourself, it's really not a lesson that sinks in. So if you are in any stage of codependency and this brings some sort of awareness to you as to where you may be dependent on some other thing to tell you, it's okay for you to feel this way, act this way, think this way, be this way. Whatever that is, it's important to see how can you start to detach yourself from that. So think of it as a cord, and it's a cord you want to start cutting. And sometimes the cutting can take a while. And that's okay. It doesn't matter. There is no timeline on that. But the most important thing is to show up and to do the work to cut that cord. Detachment is hard. It's really, really hard for codependents to start recovering from that, because much like a drug addict experiences withdrawal symptoms, a codependent will experience withdrawal symptoms. Codependency works mostly with your solar plexus chakra, so that's right underneath your rib cage, where your gut is. And actually a really common sign of codependency is digestive issues, either overeating, undereating, weird cravings, or just unsettled stomach is a very clear sign that you experienced a either you're experiencing codependency, or at least your boundaries were crossed. And that's really what codependency is constantly cross boundaries. So the number one way to start taking your power back, literally and figuratively, and starting to heal codependency, is to establish really clear boundaries. Now, there's really only one way to do that. You have to get in touch with your intuition and know what your boundaries are. Your soul will tell you. We have a very clear, especially for personal power, when it comes for that, for boundaries. Our bodies are so well designed to tell us when something has crossed a boundary. And you have to learn to tune into yourself and learn how your body communicates that. For me, I feel like it's a gut punch, like somebody punched me in the gut when they cross a boundary. That's when I have to be really clear. I usually know right away. It's not really a conscious thing for me. I know right away what I need to do to reestablish that boundary now. And I communicate my boundaries really clearly. It's not up to me to have the other person understand why I have those. I'm not here to explain myself. I'm just here to tell you that that was too far. And that's actually really important when you're recovering from codependency, is not to explain why. Is to say, no, that's not okay. This is your other option. If you can't do that, then you can't interact with me. The explanation is actually a defense mechanism, and it's still it will reinforce a codependency, because you feel like you can't, that saying no is not enough. And it's very important to teach yourself and to reprogram yourself to understand that no is a complete sentence. This context will change as in different stages of your healing, but in the beginning, when you're just starting to put these new boundaries in place, is to be like, no, that is not allowed. You're not allowed to talk to me that way. You're not allowed to say that word to me. You're not allowed to call me that. You're too close. You need to move back a couple of steps. No, you cannot touch me without my permission or asking me first. All of these things are very clear and direct ways to create a personal bubble for yourself, because that is important, and it's an energetic one, and it's there in the beginning when you're healing. it is really important to know that that is there to help protect you. It's to keep the crap off of you. Okay? You're not responsible for other people's crappy emotions, crappy upbringings, whatever else they're going through, whatever they need to deal with. It is not up to you to deal with it for them. You're not here to make them feel better. In this instance, you are learning to protect yourself in a very proactive way. And as and if you are in the empath or energy work category and you're like, well, I need to connect to people, well, boundaries actually help you connect better, because that means that you're not constantly having to replenish your energy after an interaction if you have proper boundaries in place and you can communicate them. So if you're dealing with codependency, dude, I just want to tell y'all, it's totally normal. It's unfortunately is normal. There's a large group of us out there, but just because it's normal doesn't mean it's right. So be willing to just observe yourself, not get emotionally attached to what you're doing. It's not a contest. We're not here to make anyone feel bad. It's just a matter of getting objective data, okay? It's just like collecting data for an experiment. You can't change something until you know where you are. And just observe yourself and see where this stuff comes up for you. How do you do it? I know that I did that with myself this past week, and it's not a lot that much anymore, but it's in really small ways. It still kind of shows up, so I have to remain diligent in making sure that I am whole all the time. And that just means that, this is a phase right now where I have to make sure that I'm not exhibiting any codependency on anything. And by the way, one of the transitions when you are recovering from codependency is you start establishing boundaries. It's very common, and the easiest way to identify this is, where do you lose complete boundaries? So when I was recovering from my last relationship, what I noticed is that while I was really good about boundaries in 99% of my life, the one area I wasn't was with food. And I had completely let myself go in that respect and let myself eat whatever and whenever, and none of it was what I needed. As a result, I had really bad seasonal depression this year. I'm just starting to feel better. It's been maybe like a week. And but I did overcompensate by completely removing that one boundary that actually was the foundation of why I was able to establish other boundaries. So you see how if you aren't diligent and you aren't constantly looking to be more self-aware about this particular thing, you will, it's easy to fall back into habits disguised as freedom, especially when you have grown to a certain extent. So it's totally fine. It still comes up for everyone, and we all have to remain self-aware more and more each day to make sure that we don't have those habits. But it's really important to at least create the awareness. So just observe yourself. No judgment, nothing to worry about, and just see where you're at. And it's totally okay if you have it. If you do experience a lot of them, totally fine. And also judge for yourself. If you're too attached to something being a certain way, or some person always acting a certain way, or a routine that you can't do without, all of these things it's important to be, to make sure that you're not having a codependent relationship in your life. And it can come up in so many different ways. So just observe and see where you're at, and then see which one's the one that will, which one can you tackle that will feel most productive, I guess is the word. What's your like 2 birds, 1 stone deal? Okay, and start there. But first off, you just got to observe and see what's coming up and where you might be exhibiting this, and that it's totally okay, but it's your responsibility to fix it. It's not your fault that you're codependent. but it is your responsibility if you do want a growth-oriented relationship that you can build a life with someone. It's really important to make sure that you are not codependent, so that you are coming to another person whole. All right. Thanks so much for watching this week. All my information is down below. Shop is currently closed. I'm doing a revamp on my website. So right now, things are totally just not there, but the blog will be there. So check that out. You can find me on Instagram. All that information is down below. Otherwise, I will see y'all next week. Bye.